Welcome to Bogues. This is the My Journey series. Thanks for joining us. We are here, episode 7. So as I wrapped up in episode 6, wrapping up college, obviously going to the NCAA tournament, having a very successful year from a team standpoint and an individual standpoint, it was now time to move on to the pros. So I'm not going to really go through too much of what happened here individually, because I have a very special guest coming on. His name is David Bauman, my lifelong agent, my Jerry Maguire. I don't think he realizes how much of an impact he had on my life outside of basketball as he did on. A very well-spoken, well-groomed, very well-educated, cool, calm and collected, at least on face value at times. I know there were times where he was probably as panicked as I was about certain things, but he never showed his hand. And I think this episode is, outside of it being part of the My Journey series, I think it can kind of be its own episode in a way, because we go through how I hired him as an agent, which a lot of it was dumb luck, I'm going to be honest, as we'll touch later. We're going to go through the strategy of going number 1 in the draft, being a top 5 draft pick, which we didn't know straight away. We started to figure out along the fly as the lottery happened, and once we knew who had what draft picks, it's a pretty in-depth discussion around what we, or David, implemented to try and get me as high as I could in the draft, and the strategy and the back and forth and all that kind of stuff to get me in the best possible position for the draft. And it worked out sensationally. Obviously, the rest is history. There were some speed bumps along the way, some things that could have really hindered me and hurt my draft stock. It was almost like a Hollywood movie. So, we touch on all that in depth. And that's why I think this episode is awesome, because it can be a standalone away from the My Journey. It can just be what's in the mind of an agent representing a top 5, top 10 pick. What are they trying to do? And I think David really thought outside the box with a lot of things and had me do some things that, as you'll hear, I didn't like doing, but now understand they were integral into getting me, into the NBA as a lottery pick and as a number 1 pick. We touch on that. We touch on the lead up to the draft. We touch on the training regime. We touch on what we did off the court marketing wise, meeting with teams, how I presented myself, how David presented me. There were some big mess ups along the way, which we'll touch on for myself, dealing with media for the first time at large, mass media constantly with the lead up. Dealing with that, I made some mistakes along the way, first to admit them. We'll touch on that. So the lead up to the draft, and we touch on, the actual draft, the 4 or 5 days before and after that, which were really a nervous time for me, a pressure-filled time for me, having family and friends around, and then the partying that went on after and all that fun stuff. And the post-draft, once you've been selected number 1, the stigma and the pressure that comes with that, going to a summer league. I think I got ejected from my second summer league game I got ejected from. Didn't play well my first 2 games, and then the last 3 or 4 games of summer league I actually played well. So the ups and downs of that, being a number 1 pick. And yeah, I just think it was a great conversation. I think a lot of people that are fans of kind of the business side of basketball will really enjoy this one. There's a lot to dig out there. So without further ado, I'm going to get to this interview with David Bauman. I hope you enjoy it. So I'd like to welcome a very special guest to Rogue Bogues for our My Journey 7th episode, David Bauman, who was my agent throughout my whole career, still technically is, even though I'm retired. We remain good friends to this day. A lot of good memories, a lot of bad memories, a lot of everything really. But I thought I'd get him on because very smart guy, seen everything in the NBA, in the lawyer world, all different dynamics, family man. So someone I greatly respect and wanted to get on. So welcome, David.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
So real quick, my college career ends obviously with a loss to Kentucky. So for me, I'm not knowing what the next step is. I immediately signed with David Bauman of SFX Sports, and his partner at the time with SFX, another guy named Artur Rashkovich, which we'll get to a little bit later. I didn't really meet with many agents. The only other agent I met with, funnily enough, was a guy named Herb Rudoy out of Chicago. He was Tony Kukoc's agent at the time. The only reason I met with him was because of that. Tony Kukoc was, as many people know, a guy I looked up to, Croatian descent. He was one of the best Croatian players to ever play the game. So he actually called me to take that meeting out of the blue. Never met him before, and that's the only reason I took it. But I still ended up going with David and SFX at the time. And to be honest, David, I don't know why I selected you guys, to be honest. If I was 19, 20, as we'll talk about later, had no idea about anything. Real kind of nonchalant about the business world, how that worked, and I imagine that's familiar for a lot of kids. But David's background, real quick. The current COO of Independent Sports and Entertainment, Executive Vice President and General Counsel, 26 years of experience as a licensed attorney and certified NBPA agent. He first started in 1992 with Fame Basketball, formerly worked for Relativity Sports, Fame obviously, SFX Sports Group and Live Nation. Founded his own company for a while, DB Hoops, in 2010, and prior to this, he was the president of SFX Basketball. So a native of New Jersey, lives in Washington, D.C. Currently. Wife Elisa, 2 kids, Jared and Ryan. But yeah, I mean, that's the background. You've been all over the place. But I guess let's first touch on when we first met, because that's the context we want to try to build. Is I didn't really spend a whole lot of time with you, but my father met yourself and Alex Rushkovic in 2003 at the World Championships in Greece. So just take us through that.
Yeah. So it was summertime. It was July of 2003. I was at the beach with my family on a vacation in the shore of the state of Delaware, which is about 2 miles from Washington, D.C. And I got a call from my partner in Europe, Alex Roskovich. And he said, you really should come over to Greece. There's this, there's some amazing players, but there's this one particular kid named Andrew Bogut from Australia that you really should take a look at. So I looked at my wife. My kids were, I think, 5 and 3 at the time. And I said, honey, I'm sorry, but I probably have to go out for a couple of days to Greece. So I literally up and left my family on the beach, and I went to Thessaloniki, which is the north of Greece. And it was the 2003 World Championships. And I get to my hotel, I change my clothes quickly, and I go to the gym. And I meet up with my partner, and I think you guys were playing. It was, I forget the game, Lithuania, Korea. It was one of these early games, and it was a 15,000 seat gym, something like that, and there were like 2,000 people there, and literally you were like killing it. You must have had 30 points and 20 rebounds or something like that. And Alex and I go to look for the Australian section, which is all in yellow, and then we look every time you score. I look for the two folks that are cheering and dancing, and I see your mom and dad, and I literally walk up to them and I extend my hand. And I say, you must be Mr. and Mrs. Bogut. Your father said, yes. I said, I'm David Bauman. I'm an American sports agent. I work for the company that represents Michael Jordan. And he looks at me stunned. He says, Michael Jordan's agent is interested in my son? And that was how we met.
Yeah, I mean, a pretty crazy story with how it all worked out. And I guess an appeal to my father at the time was your partner in the business, Artur Rašković, who obviously a Serbian guy. So being able to have him in your stable helped in this instance because of the Balkan connection. My father obviously being Croatian, they could speak the native tongue. So that was kind of a pretty good icebreaker for you and the company.
Absolutely. And we just hit it off. And I think I was respectful. I said, Mr. and Mrs. Bogut, why don't we meet up after the game? And I'd love to say hello to your son. And so we waited, and I think you guys won pretty big, and you had a big game. If I remember, you had like this weird, like streaky hair. It was like silver and like blonde or something.
Blonde. Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
It was pretty nasty.
So we met after the game, and then, I said, hey, we got to eat. Let's go break some bread. So, Alex Roskovich knew of a really good seafood place nearby because Thessaloniki was on the water. And, we all go walk across the street basically, and we sit down, and all the NBA scouts are in the same restaurant. They all know me, and we're saying hello. And I think a few of them said, oh, of course you're speaking to Andrew Bogut. He's the best player in the tournament. And we sat down, and, we got the menus, and your father said and I said something like, Mr. Bogut, your son's going to have an opportunity to make a lot of money when this tournament's over. There's, Greek teams and Spanish teams, and Russian teams, and, he could play a couple of years in Europe and then go to the NBA. And your father says, David, why? Something like, why would he do that? Like, Rick Majerus would be really mad. And I was stunned. I said, Rick Majerus? What does Rick Majerus have to do with this? He said, "Oh, I guess you didn't hear. Andrew signed the national letter of intent like the day before he left for the tournament."
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty spot on. I actually signed it the year before and then it expired, and I signed it the following year. And look, that was a pretty interesting time. I didn't have a whole lot of involvement with you. I wasn't at that dinner. That was just my parents and you. So I didn't really deal with the agent side of things that early. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I started getting offers which were crazy at that time, and I discussed this on, I think, episode 4 or 5, and it was hard to turn down. We're from a working class family that we had good years and bad years predicated on how my dad's business was going at the time, and there were years where we didn't have a lot of food on the table, and there were years where we could have a feast, if that makes sense. And to be offered $1 million by some of these Greek teams, even Sabona tried to make a pitch last minute when I holidayed in Croatia afterwards, was pretty surreal. And we kind of, like I said, we were flying blind with how all this worked, had no idea. But I guess the staple of what my dad was saying was we gave our word, or I gave my word, to go to the University of Utah, and that was pretty important to me. And I always had the mindset of that if I go there and hate it, I can always sign those Euro deals, and yeah, I turn those down.
And the crazy thing about it, Andrew, is once your father told me that you were going to the University of Utah, NCAA rules applied to that lunch or that dinner. And I was a certified agent. I was a lawyer. And even though we were in Thessaloniki, Greece, I had to make sure we followed the rules. Otherwise, you would have, your eligibility would have been shot. So then I had to tell your father, Mr. Bogut, I didn't realize that I can't actually buy you dinner. And his face got, redder than it normally is. And he said, what do you mean? This kind of restaurant's not in our budget. And it was really embarrassing. And then there were some other Croatian guys that were in the restaurant, some players, and they came over, and I guess they knew your dad, and they started talking, and they actually ended up buying all of us dinner. So the issue went away. But, I realized, I had NBA scouts looking at other people looking, and if I had bought your mom and dad lunch or dinner, your Utah career may have, been over before it even started.
Yeah, and that's an issue I've spoken about at length with the NCAA, which is a whole separate podcast. But yeah, it is that crazy. And like I said, we had no idea. I didn't even have an idea about the rules of the NCAA, and neither did my father. So he probably thought at one point that you were talking shit and didn't want to front up to pay the meal, knowing how fiery he gets. But that's the craziness of the NCAA.
To this day, Andrew, I believe it wasn't just getting in early and meeting you and your parents early. I believe it was the attention to the detail and the fact that we were professional and did make sure we followed the rules.
Oh, no doubt. And I think that's important, especially when you got like a kid or kids that don't know, we don't know what the hell's going on with half these rules and what you can and can't do. And I mean, like I said, for a working class family to be taken to dinner by an agent and they tell you that they can't pay, it stuns you at first because you might think, are they talking shit? But then when you actually sit down and think about it, you're like, no, this makes sense. They would love to buy us dinner and schmooze us and get us over the line that way. So the fact that they brought that up, I mean, was very, very important. I do remember a funny story. I don't know if it was at that dinner, it was later on down the track, which we'll get to about Arto. You'd have to remind me to bring it up. But one other thing I forgot to bring up, you got this might lighten the mood a little bit for this podcast. You got 2 kids, Jared and Ryan, right?
Yes.
Who's your favorite?
Jared's my favorite oldest son, and Ryan's my favorite youngest son.
So I got this info that I had to ask you that question. So
I've always been diplomatic. You've known that about me, Andrew.
Yes, but your kids want an answer. They've stitched you up and sent this in, so you got to answer it.
Well, they don't ever get the answer. It's whoever's nicest to me that particular day. But we're blessed. They're both at Vanderbilt at the same university, so they're actually best of friends, and we get to know that they're enjoying their college experience together.
Yeah, I had to get that one out because they reached out to me behind the scenes to try and put you under the pump, but that didn't go too well. You're always cool, calm, and collected for the most part, which is what you want in an agent, I guess. But I guess then we keep in touch, you and I guess. I mean, what would it have been throughout my freshman year? Maybe monthly, like just a check-in every now and then, if that. It wasn't very often because of rules and all that kind of stuff. And then I go over to the Olympics, have a great Olympics, which then helps my stock again in the NBA draft boards, and then come back for my sophomore year. Now, during my sophomore year, I explained in the last episode, I had Ray Giacoletti on, who you know very, very well and had a lot of dealings with. And
yeah,
there were a little bit of, some teething issues when he got the head coaching job. We got into it a little bit. And I remember the day, I can't, it would have been the first or second week of our season, or preseason actually. We were still playing D2, D3 schools. And I got into it with Giacoletti at a practice session. I left fuming. He was fuming. And I remember calling you and basically saying, like, get me the fuck out of here. I don't want to be in college anymore. I want to sign pro. And looking back, I don't think it was really something that Ray Giacoletti did. I think it was just the battering that I received from Rick Majerus on a daily basis, kind of being not sold a lemon, but you know how college is. They tell you you're going to be the world and everything's fine. And then once I got there, it was completely different. And then having a great Olympics, then coming back and then a new coach, new system, a little bit of frustration. Do you remember the phone call I made to you?
I do. And what I remember about Coach Majerus, may he rest in peace. He would break down players for the first 2 years. He would start to build them back up junior year, and then senior year they would be, an All-American. And that was, Michael Doliak and Keith Van Horn and guys like that. And you never had that chance, so you sort of were just broken down your first year. And if I remember, I think you told me this a long, long time ago. You were sort of hazed as a freshman. The older kids would they beat the crap out of you in practice, and you started doing that your sophomore year. But it was with Ray Giacoletti, and it was different. He didn't expect that from you. And I think you called me and complained and said you wanted to go to Greece, and then Coach Giacoletti called me and said Andrew's about 1 day away from getting kicked off this team. Said you weren't being a leader. You were like sucker punching your teammates on screens. You were just out of control. And then I think he also said that you embarrassed him in front of the team. You just screamed and yelled, and, he's trying to solidify his position. So I think you were both sort of learning each other, and it was like two alpha males trying to figure each other out.
Yeah, no doubt. And like I said, I remember distinctly driving back to my apartment complex and calling you. And then I think Giacoletti gave me a day off to rethink things. And then it was kind of crisis meetings between you and I, and you're probably the conduit between, Ray and I, and then basically said, you're an idiot. If you want to go to Europe, you're a moron. Like you're basically guaranteed to be a top 10 pick right now, or maybe top, at that point might have been maybe first round, mid first round, but it would severely hurt your stock, blah, blah, blah. Just be patient. And I guess I was looking for a shoulder to cry on. And I think we weren't obviously formally engaged in any agreement because we couldn't be, because I was in college still. But yeah. I think I appreciated, as much as you don't want to hear it, I would rather have, in that moment, I would have rather have someone said, yeah, you're right, they're screwing you, typical AAU coach or family member telling you what you want to hear, but you kind of didn't. And you kind of, put a rocket up me a little bit and said, you need to fix this, and you need to get back off your horse and go and talk to Ray. And that's kind of what I did.
And I don't remember if it was right after this, but I knew I flew out. If it wasn't the next day, it was, a few days later, and you and I spoke in person. And I remember telling you, if you were going to do this, and if you were going to go to Europe, you should have done it in August and not come back for your sophomore year. But when you came back for your sophomore year, you're going to hurt your image with the NBA teams if you quit on Utah. And all of that resonated with you. You went back and you made right with Coach Giacoletti and with the team. And after that, you went on to be, obviously the best college player, in college basketball that year.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing to do. I mean, like I said, I kind of, going back to the Majerus thing, his whole thing was, you touched on it briefly, that he loved 3 to 4 year players. He loved guys that would stay in his program throughout. And I came in pretty hyped up, and he hyped me up from what I heard. Before I even got there, he was telling all the guys there, this guy's going to kick your ass. So they, seniors on that team hated me before they knew me, just because Majerus was railing them about me. And then his whole strategy was he'd try to break down a player their freshman year, even their sophomore year, and then try to build them back up. And then, they get to senior year, and they're obviously very thankful for what he's done for their career. But I felt like I was ahead of that curve, coming in as a freshman. But then going on to Ray Giacoletti, it was kind of like, okay, is this another coach that's going to tell me what I want to hear, and then, kind of batter me down? But, I made a mistake with that, and Ray was one of the best coaches I've worked for, one of the best people I've worked for, and it was a little blip in the journey, but it worked out perfectly, because I think we both kind of barked at each other a little bit, and like two dogs, in a yard kind of thing, and territorial. And then once we got over that, it kind of, it was a blessing because it really excelled everything else moving on to that season.
And it's hard for people like me and Coach Giacoletti sometimes to understand this, but you were 19 years old. You were the same age as my younger son, Ryan, now. And, we always think of you, oh, you're 7'1", 250 pounds, you're a grown ass man, but you still are going through, the adjustment between being, a young man and a man and going through this experience. So, you played the Olympics, you started, you didn't have any vacation, any downtime, and then you just all of a sudden they're back in school and you're practicing. So I think you were due for to lose your shit, once in a while. You're certainly entitled to that.
Yeah, and like I said, this is for all the listeners, it's the unknown that was probably stressing me out as well. It's a journey that you can't really teach someone. You can't really help through until you've experienced it. And it goes from freshman to Olympics to sophomore year. Then all of a sudden you've got all these agents, big name agents want to meet with you. And then I've got, Rick Majerus' friend is an agent. And then there, whatever it is, there's all these people trying to get to you. And even dealing with that was pretty hard. But I guess after all that, have a great sophomore year. Basically within a week of the Kentucky game, you fly out to Salt Lake City. My family flies out, my mum and my dad, and we basically have a meeting and say we're going to declare for the draft. So we call a press conference, declare for the NBA draft. And I announce, yourself as my agent, SFX Basketball as my agent, and then it was, for me, it was kind of preparing for the unknown, and that's where you were an integral part to the lead up to the NBA draft. But I remember going to that press conference and kind of I was a little bit kind of sad about it because I really, really enjoyed that sophomore year in Utah, but I'd obviously be crazy to go back for a third, a junior year and risk injury and risk draft stock. But I just remember how happy I was with that moment as well, being able to have a chance now to be a full-time professional. But what do you remember about that day, of the announcement of entering the NBA draft formally?
Yeah, well, as usual, your memory is a little bit fuzzy. So I was watching the game on my couch in my living room, the Kentucky game. I decided not to go to the tournament because it was easier to just sort of leave your family, give you guys space. Think you had like, a double against Kentucky. They had those 3 7-footers and you guys just, couldn't compete. You called me from the locker room and you said you were really bummed to lose. You had a great time at Utah, but you're ready to make this decision. And you asked me to come out like tomorrow to put the plan in place. And it was already after midnight my time, but it was like 11 something your time. So you were talking about tomorrow, Saturday. I thought you were talking Sunday. I literally had to get a flight, and 5 hours later I was flying out to Salt Lake City. So it wasn't a week. It was the next day. You wanted it done.
Okay. I'm usually pretty good with this kind of stuff, but that's great.
No, you wanted it done. I met you at the Grand America Hotel. I think your parents were in the country already because they had been going to the tournament games.
Yep.
So we all met at the Grand America. Ray Giacoletti met us there. I don't remember. You signed that day. I don't know if it was that morning or if it was later that day after we talked a little bit more, but you signed the paperwork. We then planned the press conference. You announced your communities, the Bogut 4 Community Foundation thing.
Yep.
The benefit. It was like Australia, Croatia, Utah, and Milwaukee. And then you also donated money to the university, and you announced that at your press conference to help, like, with the men's locker room. So here you are, not even drafted yet, and you're already giving money away. And that was all part of, like, the strategy of making sure people understood that you were not just out for the money, you're out to help, give back a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think, look, at that point, I was kind of stressed about, okay, so now I'm entering the NBA draft. I had no idea what that meant, and that's why I guess I wanted you to fly out. Wanted to have that talk about what's the next plan. And after some dialogue, we announced, entering the NBA draft, all that stuff. It was okay. What next? So, a concern for me was staying on campus, the distractions of everything a campus life has, even just being able to have the right amount of workouts, NCAA rules, all that kind of stuff. It was up in the air. So after some long conversations, and I guess you'd always had it in the back of your mind, we figured it was in my best interest to leave school immediately. So I think it was late March at the time, early April, somewhere around there. And I didn't finish classes for that semester. And look, I've been honest on this podcast. Class was definitely not the number one thing for me going to college. It was basketball was number 1, 2, and 3, and then class was 4. Not to say I actually didn't do well in school. I mean, I averaged, I was at a 3.0 pretty much throughout college. So that's just one of those things that my focus was so much on basketball. But we come to the decision of having me base myself in Washington, D.C. or Maryland, which was right near your office and your home. And then you basically would set up, everything workout wise, everything training wise, accommodation in what I think was a motel. Was it even a hotel? Was it a motel?
Motel, hotel. Either way, they knocked it down. It's now a Whole Foods, which is one of the high end grocery stores in America.
Yeah, but take us through that plan and I guess getting me over there to be able to be not only under your nose, but get the right amount of workouts in. Now, keep in mind that at that point, we probably still, right after I declared, where would you say I was probably picked to be drafted? Was it top five or top 10 at that point?
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. So some of your listeners are probably saying, well, Andrew went number 1. He was clearly the number 1 player all season. I believe you started the season in the 20s in some of the mock drafts.
Yeah, late first, yeah.
Yeah, so 20 to 30. And then as you played well and you guys won like a bunch of games in a row and you started, becoming a double machine, you moved up to like the lottery. And so by the time you got out to DC, you were probably like late, like 8 to 12, 8 to 15, maybe 7 to 10, something like that. And it really was going to depend on the draft order because of, team fit and team need. There were a lot of good point guards in that draft as well. So when you get to Washington D.C., we're just trying to really focus on you had a typical European body. You had, if I remember correctly, you had higher body fat than we really wanted, and so we got you on a good eating program and made sure that you just started working your butt off, legs, core, things that you didn't really do in college. We started doing because that's what the NBA needs.
Yeah, I think your memory is a little jogged. I couldn't put on weight. My body fat was okay. I couldn't put on weight. I think I came out at 225, I think, after my sophomore year. And a concern for me was that was, the era of the Shaqs and Ben Wallace and Yao Ming and holy shit, I'm supposed to play the 5. I can't hold my own against these guys. So we really hit the weight room hard. I still didn't put on a whole lot. I think I got up to, I was 240 or 245 for my rookie year. But yeah, I put on about 15 or 20. But look, there were some intense workouts. We worked out with a guy named Bebe. I still remember him. He worked off a boxing clock, funnily enough, for all our workouts, all our basketball workouts. And I guess this is where the strategic part of entering the draft comes into play, because as it kind of went further and further towards first off the lottery, we went from top 10 to, okay, it's probably going to go top 5. And then it was a matter of waiting for who was in the lottery. And then I still remember that night. It was, you invited me over to your house and we watched the lottery together. I think you cooked some steaks on the barbecue or something like that. And we sat back and watch that draft night, hoping to see, who had the 1, 2, 3 picks.
Yeah, it was an interesting time because, if the ping pong balls didn't go in the right direction, you could have been 4th or 5th, which in the scheme of things wouldn't have been awful, but it would have cost you money. And, obviously at that point you were all in, you wanted to go as high as possible. It was, I think Atlanta had the most number of ping pong balls. I think it was Toronto was up there, Golden State, New York, Milwaukee, Charlotte,
New Orleans, and
Portland.
Utah.
I think had.
Yeah.
I think Portland had 3. Utah, and the interesting thing, Andrew, is we sort of threw the mold out with you. I learned from David Falk, who at the time was probably the number 1 agent in the NBA, and basically I just tried to make the Andrew Bogut game plan, and it would be different than anything that we had done. So, for example, I remember suggesting to you, why don't you write handwritten letters and we can fax them over to some of these teams in the lottery that you want to go to? And teams like New York and a few of the bigger cities that you didn't want to go to, we just ignored them. And you ended up sending, 5 or 6 handwritten letters to these teams, just wishing them well in the lottery that night. And I got a couple of calls from people saying, we've never in 20 or 30 years seen a player do this. And it was just part of the PR campaign, just to put you out there as a good guy, somebody that they could rely on. He's not going to be a distraction, and he's going to be just a good person on their team.
Yeah, and I probably wanted to fire you on the spot because I'm like, dude, I just left school. I don't want to be writing letters and essays at this point. I just want to play basketball, knowing how fiery I was. But yeah, it worked out real well, and that were just some of the nuances that I learned from you, and that you guys and you specifically kind of structured within getting drafted. We didn't just leave it like most athletes do, like, I'm just going to show up for my workout, do well, and that's it. And then they pick who they pick. We try to do a lot of groundwork around that. But so anyway, the lottery comes out. Milwaukee sneaks up. I don't know what their chances were. They had a very rare chance of getting the number one pick, and they end up getting number one. Atlanta goes 2, and number 3 was Utah, I believe.
Well, it was Portland, and then Utah traded with Portland.
Okay, yep. So Utah ended up with 3 though, right? And I guess then we kind of knew, look, Milwaukee I think they just signed Dan Gadzuric to an extension or a 6-year deal, so he was a backup big for him. So we knew they didn't have a starting big. Atlanta was kind of in the same boat. They had, I think Zaza might have been there at that time, so they didn't really have anyone. So we kind of figured that they're pretty good chances to take me. And so then all of a sudden, the strategy had then flipped from 5 to 10 teams to 2, maybe 3. So explain how that was all formulated, and then what that led to as far as my workouts and what I was trying to do to get ready for working out for those teams.
Yeah. So once we knew the results of the lottery, it was very obvious you were either going to go 1 or 2, and it was at that point it was a two-man race between you and Marvin Williams. Chris Paul, interestingly enough, is going to probably be the Hall of Famer out of that draft class. And he went 4. He was seen as possibly a little undersized, and these teams were just drafting based on team need. And Milwaukee certainly needed a center. They did not need a point guard. And they felt that your passing ability, your ability to get up and down the floor was something that they really could use in their offense. So at that point on that lottery night, I knew you'd be 1 or 2. And so we no longer had to address some of the other issues, some of the athleticism issues or some other things. We really just had to get you ready for a 1.5 hour one-on-one workout. And we spent the next roughly 4 weeks doing that.
Yeah, and that, to me, that was a little frustrating. So there were some other guys that I stayed with, Drago Pasalic, who I'm still friends with this day, a Croatian player. He was kind of potentially a second-round pick at that point. And there was another kid there named Nemanja Alexandrov who ended up getting hurt. I believe you had him, and he was potentially going to be a lottery pick the following year, but did his knee, had a bit of form issues.
ACL surgery.
Yeah, and then just could never get those legs back, and now I think he's still playing in a lower level league in Europe somewhere. But so Alexandrov wasn't working out. Drago Pasalic was kind of my workout partner with Bebe, so we used to work out every day, lift together, and then that was the only competitive basketball I got, was one-on-one with Drago, and he was a 4-5 as well. So we had some battles, and we ended up being good friends because of it. But Drago would then go and play. We used to work out at Georgetown for the most part, and he used to go and play 5-on-5 with a lot of the Georgetown open gym guys, like from Georgetown University, and there'd be a few NBA players there. I remember Mike Sweetney used to come down sometimes, and I don't know if you remember, but I asked you a few times, like, let me just play a couple of these games, because I was just so sick of doing individual workouts. As much as I wanted to get better, I was like, I need to play some basketball. And you were adamant on, hell no, you might get hurt. I guess explain the thinking behind all that.
Yeah. So first of all, Bebe's nickname, it's John Durr, and he was one of the first guys to go in the first round under John Thompson at Georgetown. And he actually was the trainer for Ewing and Alonzo Mourning, and I think Mutombo as well. Those were all our players. So Coach Thompson, was a great guy, big supporter of our company, and allowed us to have access, and Bebe as well. But Bebe knew what he was doing. He put you through, individual workouts every day that rivaled what the NBA teams were doing. You did the Mikan drills, you did, different layups. He worked on your hook shots, your banks, your pump fakes, things like that. And it was an hour and a half. I think you were putting up 500 shots a day, and then you were done. Drago would go and he'd play for another 2 hours. What you understood, you didn't understand at the time, but you understand now, players would have been gunning for you. Who's this big white kid? He's not that good. He's going number one. Let me see what I can do. Then you start getting some bows. You break your nose. You possibly step on somebody's foot. So there was just no scenario that we were going to be comfortable having you play, even one-on-one. And to be honest, Andrew, we'll talk later about, the summer league. It showed, because by the time you got to the summer league, you hadn't played in 3 months.
Yep. Yeah.
But the other part is interesting. Your father was very, hands-on. He kept calling me and getting updates, and he was calling you as well. And you were just exhausted. You were doing, 6 days a week, 2-a-days. Basketball in the morning, and you were doing Kevin Maselka and Elite Physique. You were doing all the physical stuff in the afternoon with legs and whatnot. But you were doing unique, if you remember, what was it, the movie Rocky, where maybe it's Rocky 3, where Rocky was chasing the chicken and carrying the logs, and Drago had all this computerized stuff in Russia and Soviet Union, and you were basically doing the Rocky stuff. You were taking sheets of newspaper in each hand, and you were rolling them up to get your hands stronger. You were sticking your hands in buckets and rolling up rice, and you were doing plyometrics and running on the ladder drills to get yourself your foot speed. And your dad called me one day. He said, "David, Andrew's been telling me what he's been doing, and this is no way to prepare my son for the NBA." I said, "Michael, with all due respect, we're not preparing Andrew for the NBA. We're preparing Andrew for a 1.5 hour workout with Milwaukee and a 1.5 hour workout with Atlanta. He's going to go one on none. Maybe there'll be a 5'2" overweight coach posting him up, but he's not preparing for the NBA. The NBA team will do that after the draft." And it was eye-opening for your father as well.
Yeah, because it's just not, I guess it wasn't normal from what I was used to, in college. It was work on your game a little bit, do a bit of individuals, and then who are we playing? Open gym, 5-on-5, let's go at it. And I guess I just missed that competitiveness and not understanding all the stuff between it. But like you said, this wasn't a strategy that was getting me ready for my first NBA game. It was a strategy to get me ready to be drafted the highest I could possibly go. And those workouts, which we'll touch on, once I got to Milwaukee and Atlanta and did those workouts, they were probably harder in a sense than being with 4 or 5 guys, because number one, I was getting no rest between drills, because it was just okay, next thing, quick water, next thing. I didn't have a chance to show the competitiveness side of my game where, one-on-one with someone or 2-on-2, and they were really important parts of my game, especially my passing. So I couldn't really show any of that. All I could show was I could handle the ball for a 7-footer, I could pass and could shoot with both hands, do a whole lot of different things out there. So those workouts actually were harder than people think, the one-on-one with the 1-on-0 with the chair, or 1-on-1 with the chair. And that's what people don't realize. But yeah, the strategy was to get ready for that. But when you're young, 18, 19 years old, and you've got an agent telling you do this, do that, do this, you're like, what the hell is going on here? Where am I?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we did have a plan, and we stuck to it. And I give you credit. You didn't really buck against what we were recommending. You accept all of our advice.
You also loaned me some money. I don't know if you remember that, where basically I'd come out of college and had to obviously just move and then become somewhat functional adult. I wasn't full adult yet because I was staying at a hotel motel, so that was all taken care of with utilities. But people don't realize you don't get paid in the NBA till November 15 is your first check. We were in negotiations for a shoe deal and all that. Obviously we hadn't solidified anything, waiting to get drafted and all that, but I think it was it $150K? I think it was you guys loaned me.
Yeah, that sounds right. So first of all, even when I went to Utah and, we would go to dinner, it was a negotiation because we had to go someplace where, you could afford, you only had, a couple of dollars in your pocket each time. And, because you were so well known there, I couldn't buy you dinner there either. So I was keenly aware that you didn't have any money. So, we did offer to give you an advance on your first paycheck. So I think it was $150,000. I think we probably wired it over to Australia so your parents, would have access to it and would be able to take care of whatever you and the family needed. But, me and my company, we took care of everything else, as you remember, like the training costs, you had food. I think you guys were over at my house 4 or 5 times a week for barbecue, and my wife was cooking, and we were making salads and trying to eat healthy. And my sons were just thrilled to have these, couple of 7-footers hanging around. They were, as I said earlier, they were like 5 and 3 years old. So that was interesting. But yeah, you were broke, and we needed to make sure that, it wasn't embarrassing for you and your family, because that's the trickiest thing with this transition, from having no money at all to making millions. There's a transition. And a lot of it involves, being respectful of you and your family along the way.
Yeah, well, I think we were VIPs I think it was the Denny's around the corner from my apartment. That's where we were VIPs. It was, $6 eggs, bacon, potatoes. So that's kind of where we frequented. I remember we actually had our meeting there when the whole Ray Jacqueletti thing happened. It was always at Denny's, so I could at least...
Yeah, it definitely was Denny's. I remember that.
Pretty cool.
But after, I remember people recognizing... Yeah, but people recognized you, and like I would have screwed both of us if I had bought you dinner. And believe me, I wanted to.
Oh, no doubt. And
I think I've bought you a lot of dinners over the years. So I think I've made up for it.
Yeah, no doubt. Always gave you the check. So then, look, the lottery gets announced. Was top 2, as we said. We go and work out with Milwaukee. We go and work out with Atlanta. This is where the strategy you implemented of keeping it very, very business-like and not treating it as you're an athlete or a jock going for a tryout. And what I mean by that is you literally made me wear a suit everywhere. I hated it. I didn't even know. I knew how to put a tie on because I went to a Catholic school, but I did not know anything about suits, did not know anything about matching your belt with your socks, color coordination. I mean, my button-up shirt in school was a short sleeve button-up shirt, so I didn't even know there was long sleeves. I was like, why people wear long sleeves? You sweat too much. So I had no idea about dress sense, and your whole thing was you wear a suit whenever you go to meet with a team or an appearance or a dinner. I think we did the college awards, made me wear a suit for all those. And I absolutely hated it. And I also remember one thing I remember to this day that you used to do. So I had no idea about fine dining or even like formal dining. So still to this day, I struggle with the places that have 4 or 5 forks and all that, and 4 or 5 knives. Which one's for which? I always just grab the biggest one and then just ask for another one for my next setting. That's still what I do. But your big thing was the napkin on the lap. So most nice restaurants, they bring out that nice linen napkin. You're supposed to put it on your lap, and whenever you need it, you use it. And you always told me, put your napkin on the lap. And I never remember. And then we go to dinner with, let's say, the Milwaukee execs or Atlanta. And you would basically pick your napkin up and hold it up like a sheet of paper for a second. Give me like, not a death stare, but like, hey, put your fucking napkin on. And then I'd be like, oh shit, yeah, I got to put my napkin on. But that was part of the strategy too, right?
Of course. First of all, on the napkin, I was more worried that you were the kind of person that would punch the waiter if you tried to put the napkin in your lap for you. So I was concerned about that. Look, even to this day, Andrew, I'm having a meeting. I'm in LA now. I'm having a meeting tomorrow with a potential top 10 recruit. And my mantra for all of these workouts is treat it like it's a job interview. Be extremely professional. While, yes, things are very casual, you can wear shorts and cut off t-shirts and have your headphones when you walk off the plane and go to your workouts. But I always prefer that you show the team that you're treating this like a job interview. And that's exactly what we did. I recommended you wear a suit and tie on the plane, even though it was, 90 degrees in June as we go to Milwaukee. I tried to make you comfortable with eating out at nice restaurants so that, I don't want to make fun of you, but you knew like gazpacho is cold. Like you don't send it back and say this soup is cold. I just wanted to make sure that you...
did that. I've done that before.
I just wanted to make sure that you because you're a fish out of water. You're going from, eating $6, fast food sandwiches in Utah and not having any money to all of a sudden having millions of dollars. So it was a transition. And I just wanted to make sure that part of the interview process was that, you were comfortable with that. I remember suggesting that we do a resume for you, because when you go on a job interview, you give the interviewer a resume. And so you handed Senator Cole, who owned the Bucks, you handed him a resume, and he was just flabbergasted. He was floored that you were in a suit and tie. You had done some research on his committees that he served on in the U.S. Senate. You really did a good job. You did your homework, and it really showed. And don't forget, all you guys were young. Marvin Williams was a freshman, Deron Williams, Chris Paul, and even you were only 19 or 20. But you'd been around the world. You'd played in the World Junior Championships. You'd played in the Olympics. You'd come from Australia. So you were much more mature than them and more worldly. And I wanted that to show. And I think it did.
Yeah, and I think you're overblowing how well I did it. It was taken from you. I mean, you were the one. We can be honest on this. I'm not embarrassed by it. I had no idea about fine dining. I had no idea about suits, and I used to push back against you with, why the fuck do I need to wear a suit? Why do I need to do this? And I remember that meeting with Senator Cole, and I remember leaving that meeting and you basically saying, like, you're going number one, basically. You've hit this out of the park.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Larry Harris had mentioned to you that, Marvin Williams had shown up in shorts, flip-flops, and a sleeveless T-shirt, which for most people wouldn't be a big deal, but as Senator Cole, who's a career politician and businessman, was a big deal, and it worked. It worked wonders. The rest is history with all that. But I mean, in the moment, I definitely was pushing back because I was just so uncomfortable with that whole realm. I'm very good now, I believe, in a business setting, and I enjoy those settings of networking and meeting people and how to condone myself and conduct myself. But back then, I had no idea. I hated it. I hated those forums because I wasn't comfortable. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know, do I shake this guy's hand? What do I talk about? Do I take my jacket off? Don't I, where do I put my jacket when all that kind of stuff? And I guess that was just a part of the learning process to becoming a professional athlete and also an adult.
Exactly. And look, my job as an agent, my sons used to say, Dad's a sports agent. And the teacher would say, what does that mean? It means he goes to basketball games and takes 7-foot players out to steak dinners afterwards. That's
close.
all they ever saw.
Yeah.
But the job of an agent, as you know, is, we negotiate 5% of the time, 10% of the time. The other 90% is support. It's advising, it's guiding, it's mentoring, it's, getting you marketing deals, but overall just sort of helping you, get through your career. And in your case, we just started early.
Yeah, and I think that's a lost art today. I mean, I'll love to get you on. We'll get you on again down the track to discuss the agency side of everything going on in the world. But that's, I think it's a lost art these days. There's a lot of big agencies, and that's something we'll discuss further on. But another part of the strategy, this one really blew up on me, was the media side of things. So I wasn't horrible at media appearances if it was just strictly basketball based, but I wasn't great. I mean, I wasn't a guy that loved talking to the media. So for context, my freshman year in college, Ricky Majerus had a rule where freshmen couldn't speak to the media, which actually hurt me because I thought it could, if I had that opportunity from day one, make mistakes, you learn as you go. So then all of a sudden, sophomore year, I could talk to the media a little bit. So I was figuring all that out, and you obviously were making sure I didn't blow any media appearances and say anything silly. But I also remember you telling me the media is going to compare you to big white guys or big white stiffs. They're going to compare you to these guys that are plot up and down the court, kind of similar to what I was probably the last 5 or 6 years of my career, to be quite honest. But you were always like, play it down. And if the media compares you to someone who's a big white stiff, distance yourself from that. Now, I went a little aggressive with that distancing. So I always had in the back of my mind, if they compare me to any big white guy, I got to say I'm way better than them and be really super aggressive with that. And I guess a mistake I made in that process was someone brought up Luke Longley and said, Luke Longley is the best Australian to play in the NBA up to this point. How do you compare yourself? And I just kind of went to town on poor Luke Longley, who I'm good friends with to this day. And I've laughed many times about this story, but I'd never met Luke at that point. And I basically just said, I'm better than him. I can move faster. I'm a better shot blocker, a better rebounder, a better shooter, whatever. So poor Luke Longley's 5-10 years in retirement and got this young punk just railing him while he's in Australia, I assume, just hanging out. And he wasn't too happy with it. I got in a lot of trouble from guys in the national team. Shane Heal messaged me a pretty abusive email at that point, and rightfully so. And that was my first foray into making a mistake with the media and saying something I probably didn't mean. But as a young fella, context is king, and I didn't relay my message properly. And you remember how much that blew up, right?
100%. That was at the media day at the draft in New York. And at this point, we knew you were going number one, even though the team didn't tell us. And all you had to do was just get through the day. And I guess that's why we're on a podcast called Rogue Bogues. I mean, you just couldn't help yourself.
And yeah, I don't think it really affected me too much NBA draft wise. I mean, but it more hurt me because I'd played in the Olympics last year. So I was around Shane Heal and a lot of these Australian legends. it hurt me a little bit that they were hurt by it, and that's where I was disappointed in myself. But it had been said, and I tried to, no matter what I said after that, that was always the clickbait headline. But that was, like I said, that's something that no one can prepare me for. I mean, you couldn't sit next to me during media interviews and make sure, oh no, he's not saying that, he's not saying this. It was just something I had to learn from, and I've made further mistakes throughout my career along the way with that. But the bonus of that was I was always honest for the most part, and it's just funny because Luke Longley, obviously I work with him the last probably 5, 6, 7 years, and we have a laugh about it all the time. And the most disappointing thing is you don't realize how good of a guy Luke Longley is until you meet him, and then the fact that I kind of disrespected him after the career that he had, 3 championships and being the staple of Australian basketball, kind of hurt my soul a little bit once I got back to my room and read it.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, Andrew, they also asked you questions about Vlade Divac because there were a lot of comparisons, good passer, get up the floor, and yet it was different because the Australian media really went hard on you. I think you dismissed Divac and said, I'm better than him and faster than him, and it just ended. It died. But the Luke Longley piece had legs. Yeah,
and that's Australian media, English media, very tabloidy, very clickbaity, and you don't blame him in that context. I said what I said, but the one other kind of blip in the radar.
If I can make one point on this, so the root of this issue with you was always about being totally honest. You didn't think when you were 19 and probably now you're 36 that people should have filters. And you and I remember this specifically. We had to talk about being diplomatic. And I said, you don't always have to say what comes to your mind. And certainly not when it comes to like the media with the draft. And you said to me, you're just a lawyer and you always parse your words. And you said, I'm honest and I am who I am. I said, okay, fine. But I said, let me give you an example. My wife walks out of the closet and says, David, do I look fat in this dress? If I think the dress is not very flattering, I might say, honey, remember that blue dress you wore last week? You looked stunning in that. Why don't you wear that tonight? So I avoid the question. I don't hurt her feelings. And she gets guidance from me going forward. You told me that was lying. And I don't know how you are with Jess, but, and she's obviously a beautiful woman. But, in life, I think we always we shouldn't just say what's on our mind. We always moderate it. And I think that's what I was trying to teach you, at the very beginning of the process. And for the most part, you handled the media very, very well over the course of your 15 years in the NBA.
Yeah, I guess it's hard as a young fellow because you just like I've mentioned earlier numerous times, you just don't understand the game until you're in it. That it's a lot of it is, and a lot of it I still have a problem with to this day is it's smoke and mirrors, and it's at times, like you said, you don't want to answer the question. You got to circle around answering the question. And I was always frustrated as a kid by watching politicians and whatnot and saying, just answer the question. So I kind of always want to be someone that answered a question, but there's sometimes you just can't do it. And especially, these days, especially with everything going on in the world, there's sometimes things you got to distance yourself from. But I was moving on to the last speed bump we had going into the actual draft day. Rick Majerus, my former coach at the University of Utah, freshman year, right after the lottery was announced, really, he put out a statement saying that I had a degenerative eye disorder and that I'd go blind in a matter of years. I do have a degenerative eye disorder, but it's very stable. A lot of people have it. It's called keratoconus, and it's basically just my cornea is not as round because I rubbed my eyes a lot as a kid when I had hay fever, and my sister had the same thing, and it can cause a little bit of an issue with your vision, but nothing contacts can't fix. And I had some tests in Utah at one point. They found it and whatever, and somehow someone put in his head that I was going to go blind. So he basically releases this to the media for some reason when he was asked about me. Oh, well, he's a good player, but he's going to go he's going to go blind soon, essentially. So we were then like, what the hell is going on? I couldn't figure it out because I was like, okay, so what's the motive behind that? We found out that he was the official workout coach for Deron Williams leading to the NBA draft. We found out that he possibly wanted to keep Keith Van Horn as the highest draft pick from the University of Utah ever. So it still would have been coached by Rick Majerus, who was the number 2 pick. There were other theories of he had friends in the front office in Utah, and he was hoping that I'd do them a favor by talking me down. So I'd slip down a few notches to go to Utah with their pick. But this was, pretty detrimental to my stock. And I remember I didn't really know. I don't think I even read it. I think you told me about it, but I remember you were real pissed about it, really, really pissed about it. And then we formulated a letter, a cease and desist, and had to get in touch with him. But take us through, those few weeks.
Yeah. So you never want to wake up as an agent 2 weeks or 10 days from the draft and read in the newspaper that your player's former coach is saying that he's going blind. Not something that you want to have to handle, that close to the draft. But I don't know if you remember this, Andrew. David Falk was very, very close to Rick Majerus, and David represented Keith Van Horn, and one of our other colleagues represented Mike Doliak. So if anybody should have been protected, it would have been you, given Majerus' relationship with the company at large, which is why I was so angry. And as a lawyer, I knew we needed to respond immediately. And as an agent, I knew we needed to get on top of this, because sometimes these rumors, have a tendency to get a life of their own. So I did write a 2-page cease and desist letter, and I also referred it out to outside counsel in case we needed to file a lawsuit and an injunction against Majerus.
Yeah, it was. I mean, for me, to be honest, I didn't really have any gripes after Majerus left. I mean, it was what it was. I didn't thoroughly enjoy playing for him, but I enjoyed learning from him. He was one of the best X's and O's guys I've worked with, and I can differentiate things. If I don't like a person, I can still, compliment whether they've done something really well. And he was one of the best X's and O's teachers I had. Now, the other side of things was tough, where his day-to-day handling of people and breaking people down was something I don't agree with, but it really hurt me, because I never really had any issue with Majerus after he left. I know he was probably a little bit pissed that I blew up into this All-American player, swept all the college awards my sophomore year. People were asking questions and writing articles my sophomore year, like, where has this kid come from? Why didn't we see him play like this his freshman year? Was it Majerus? Blah, blah, blah. So you probably read into that a little bit, but yeah, it just hurt my soul, man. It was just one of those first forays into the cutthroat business of professional sports and how things go. And I mean, still to this day, I don't really have an answer as to why, he did that and what the motives were. I mean, have you figured anything out along those lines?
Something happened at Utah. I know he resigned for health reasons, but I think that they were sort of pushing him out. And this may have been a way to punish not just you, but the university as well. And I don't know. I mean, I found the letter, and here's a line from it. We do not know why you would spread such a false and malicious rumor about a player whom you recruited and coached. But whatever the motivation, this conduct on your part must stop immediately. I mean, that's pretty preposterous that we have to tell a grown man who coached you to stop spreading knowingly false rumors.
And that's what hurt me. I thought, regardless of how Majerus left Utah, which is a whole separate story I've spoken about on record on the My Journeys, I thought he was, I get drafted, I would have almost thanked him as an integral part of my journey. Like, he toughened me up for sure, and I learned a lot of things from him just on a day-to-day basis of being accountable and professional. And I thought he was an integral part of my journey as a man and a basketball player, and that's why it kind of hurt me a lot. And like I said, that's just something that you had to kind of navigate. Now, the one kicker with all this, the ramifications of all this was, as I'm sure you'd remember, we go to do our workouts with Milwaukee and Atlanta. Both those teams send me to an eye specialist. I think the eye specialist appointment went twice as long as my on-court workout.
Yeah, but don't forget, I sent you to my personal eye doctor first.
That's right. Yep.
I wanted to make sure that we knew what you had, and he said it definitely was not macular degeneration. It was the keratoconus, and he recommended contacts. You said you hated wearing contacts, but we knew it wasn't anything major. It was like a thinning of your cornea, and it was something that was treatable and manageable. Once we knew that we were in the clear, we had no issue when we went to Milwaukee and Atlanta, and their doctors looked at your eyes as well.
Yep. And for everyone listening, I still have it to this day, and it's been stable for about 15 years, no changes. So I get tests once a year, and some people have it much worse, but it came down to having really bad hay fever as a kid, my sister as well, and used to just, one of my eyes just got a battering of me rubbing it, and It literally deformed my eyes though, but can still see fine. Contacts, glasses, even without, I'm not too bad. Just reading gets to be a bit of a problem. But so we move on from there, not knowing if that was
If we can stay on this 1 second,
go for it.
This conversation really sounds like we were so serious and we were all business, but we did have some fun.
That's right. Yeah, I missed that.
I remember when you went to meet Senator Cole, I made a recommendation to you, like, why don't you play around with this eye thing? And so what did you remember what you did when you met him?
Yeah, at your recommendation, you basically said just when you go to shake his hand, just miss his hand, like you can't see properly. And I did. And then I was acting like I needed to search for his hand, like where's your hand? So I grabbed his hand with my left hand and then put it into my right hand to shake it, acting like I was blind. And he got a kick out of that for an old fella. He had a bit of a laugh, and I think that broke the ice as well. It broke the ice about, because there was it was in the media and it was all over the place. It was picked up by every national outlet because I was going to be the number 1, number 2 pick. So I think it just broke the ice about how it just wasn't an issue, and they still did send me, to their specialists and have me go through every test under the sun though.
I remember after, the media, horde was there after your workout. They were still asking questions about it. And, was I worried? And I said, even with contacts, his eyesight's like 20/15. And I made a comment about Majerus, and I actually regretted it the moment it came out of my mouth. But I remember saying something like, Rick Majerus saying Andrew is going blind is like me saying Rick Majerus is skinny. He was a big guy, and everyone laughed, but it got reported and I was quoted, and I regretted that because I was like sinking to his level.
Yeah. And I love the rogueness. That's what we love on the podcast. So those kind of stories are fantastic. But not a smooth ride by any means, but they're the bumps in the road of getting. This is just to get to the NBA draft. So this is a lot of different things that happened. Like I said, I went and worked out. My Milwaukee workout went really well. My Atlanta workout went well, but I remember I was sucking air that workout. They put me through the paces. They had me doing all kinds of full court stuff, and I didn't think I did as well there, but it didn't really matter because I did so well in Milwaukee. So I ended up going to New York City 4 days before the draft. I don't know if it's my MO, but I didn't think of myself. The first thing, I don't know if you remember, David, but I got you. So you need to organize a fishing trip for my dad. I need to take him, because they'd been in the States basically the whole time, in and out. And you need to take me or get me somewhere where I can go fishing with my dad. And you organized, somehow found someone in upstate New York and took us in a little tin boat. And we were floating down the river for about 5 or 6 hours, just my father and I don't believe we caught a fish. I think the stream was too heavy that day and we didn't really catch anything, but I just remember coming back sunburnt. So if you look at my draft photos, I'm as tanned as can be compared to what I usually am. But what do you remember about that?
Yeah. So obviously a very stressful time. So we went up to New York a couple of days before the NBA wanted you up there because, it was just time. I think you guys were just emotionally exhausted about the whole process. So you and your dad took an entire day. I think my assistant got you a car service and you just disappeared upstate New York. It's about, I think it was 2 hours away from the city, and it's beautiful up there. And your mom and your aunties stayed in the city, and I think my wife, Elisa, took them shopping and took them to some salons and some spa treatments, things like that. And so everyone was sort of enjoying New York, trying to just relax in anticipation of the draft.
Yeah, and I remember the paparazzi being outside the hotel 3 or 4 nights before the draft, trying to get pictures of guys, whatever they're doing. So we tried to calm it down a little bit, but I guess nothing could really prepare you for that day. But there were a bit of family dramas, as we know with all families. I flew in my auntie from Australia, my auntie from Croatia, my mum, my dad, and my grandmother and my sister. And it was new to them as well. They were coming into a life. The comments that you make are, it's the NBA lottery, not only for the athlete but for the family. But you did a really good job of trying to manage that, but at times it got a little bit out of hand, and God bless your wife as well for managing a little bit of that as well with the spa salons and whatnot.
It's human nature, and I think a lot of it was just the stress of the moment. And looking back, I think anybody who may have complained or had some issues would realize that it was just the stress. But, the culmination of this all was that post-draft dinner at, remember Kim Bahuni's Italian restaurant?
Yep. Sure do.
We brought up, I surprised you with a Balkan band playing some Balkan music. We had great Italian food. We had amazing wine flowing all night. And, you and most of your family were hammered. I think I was trying to stay somewhat lucid because we had a early morning private flight to Milwaukee. And then at some point the party was over, and it wasn't over for you because you decided that we're going to go to some after hours places. And,
yeah,
trying to hold up a 7 foot, 245-pound kid, not the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's just circle back. So we end up going into the draft, obviously the draft night. The way it worked was we got there 2 or 3 hours before. I think I could have 8 on my table. So I think I'd chosen my mum, my dad, yourself, Artur Raskovic, Ray Giacoletti, his wife, maybe 1 or 2 other people, but a couple of my family members just kind of had to sit in the stands of where the draft night was in Madison Square Garden. And yeah, I mean, for me, it was I was nervous, but we sit down, we're waiting, this, that. There's kind of a bit of animosity looking at other guys because you're like, I'm better than him, he's better, whatever. And then I got called number 1. So I didn't have to wait too long. I remember just running up the stairs, shaking David Stern's hand, or before that, embracing everyone on the table, my mum, my dad, you guys for helping. And then, we essentially, the first part of the mission was accomplished. The strategy of being the number 1 pick was fulfilled. I believe you grilled Larry Harris as much as you could to try and get an answer, because some teams will tell you if they're going to take you with whatever pick, but they wouldn't tell us, right?
Yeah, it was a strategy on their part, like a marketing strategy. They definitely were taking you. I had several people call me and tell me to please calm down, like stop, reading Larry the Riot Act, because as an agent, as your friend at that point, like it just would have helped for us to know that you could just take that stress off. Larry and Senator Cole wanted you to be surprised. So when David Stern said number 1 pick in the draft, Andrew Bogut, your face would register the shock and the emotion. And after the fact, I sort of understood what he was doing, because you did look shocked, and it was like exuberance and happiness, and it was pure. And it wouldn't have been pure if they told us a few hours before. Yeah,
no doubt. Even looking back at the footage, it was definitely pure. I would have liked to have known, like you said, but it would have maybe ruined the moment. It would have been I wasn't a great actor at that point, as we all know. So get drafted, get my name called, and then it's business time. Like it's crazy what people don't see. You basically go to the back, and there's just all these little kind of small like office cubicles, let's say, that all are different TV stations and radio stations and print journalists and the New York Times, and it was straight to media, like, doing all these different media stuff. So I honestly don't remember a word I said that night. I didn't say anything silly, thankfully, because there wasn't anything that blew up the next day, but it was just a matter of going to all these different TV stations and everyone's kind of asking the same questions. You got to kind of be respectful. And it was a whirlwind. And once I got called, did that media, I just wanted to get out of there as quickly as I could, because I just wanted to go and celebrate with my family, and just kind of, it was that deep breath of just like, okay, this is over. Like, let's get to the next thing now. And yeah, we end up going back to the hotel, getting changed, and then going to Kim Bahuni's very nice Italian restaurant. I think it's still there to this day. But that was a long night. The other thing I'd say about that was Drago Pasalic, who's still a good friend of mine to this day. He ended up being in that draft. He didn't get drafted. He was projected to be possibly second round. He didn't get drafted, and we built a pretty special relationship. And I still remember and really like this about him. He came to my draft party afterwards and celebrated with me with a heavy heart, obviously, from not being drafted. So I don't know if you remember that, David.
I do, because I remember, I think I had to go to his hotel room and sort of control him down and tell him things were going to be okay, that, everything works out for a reason. Drago was a unique situation, unique player. His team had screwed him over, and I think he came to DC to start training in January or February, which is just very, very early in the process. But he did come down. He was happy for you, his friend, and, for you guys to be friends 16 years later is a testament to that friendship.
Yeah, and too many drinks that night, a lot of fun times. I remember like you said, we found somewhere else to have a few more drinks. We finally left there, and it almost all ended for me in New York City. I had way too many drinks and went across the road without looking, and almost got collected by a taxi. My sister was the one who was like had me by the arm, thankfully, and pulled me back, and it would have been a pretty quick number one pick career at that point.
Crazy. And then I don't remember how we got you back to the hotel, but you had to get up and be downstairs, I think, at 9:00 for Senator Cole's plane. And you were nowhere to be found because you were just totally passed out and hungover.
Oh, yeah. I was very, very hungover. I think most of the food that I ate that night was next to me on the bed. I remember my sister, I think, coming in and trying to get me cleaned up, like just in a half, woken up state, basically rolled me into my first ever private jet, which was awesome. I don't think my parents came out for all that. I think it was myself and was it just you and I, right?
I think so. And it was you and me and Skip, who was the community relations director of the team at the time.
Yep. So then, basically flown straight back to Milwaukee, was in town there for about, 3, 4, 5 days, meeting everyone in the organization, still no workouts, none of that stuff. And then they were in a period where they had a coach that they said was this was crazy about Milwaukee. So I met with Terry Porter, who was their coach at that time. I met with him in my pre-draft workouts, and then I think it might have been a couple of weeks after that they fired him and hired Terry Stotts, which was my first foray into the business-like nature of the NBA.
Yeah, and they figured a change would be good. And I think you had maybe like a week off before Summer League started.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, I think we took you we had a beach house. I think we took you to the beach so you could just sort of surf and just, be a 19-year-old for the first time in a very, very long time.
Yeah. And it was just some time to kind of relive the craziness of the last 3 months. For those people that don't understand, from the moment I finished college to getting drafted was just crazy. It was just a lot of pressure, even those daily workouts. You count down the days to the lottery, then the draft, and then workouts, and then everything just built up. And there was, you had all this pressure and anxiety and nerves without even playing a bloody NBA game, which was kind of crazy. And then, I ended up going back to Milwaukee and have my first back then it was called the Veterans Training Camp, which would be a summer league camp. And then they'd bring in some potential veterans they'd sign coming to the next season, mainly fringe guys. Still a few NBA bodies there. So I remember, being part of all that and then going to summer league and not knowing what to expect. And it was, I think you remember it, and you mentioned it in some of our notes that my first game was just awful, and those kind of articles came out straight after it.
Yeah, it was. Summer League now is typically it's either in Utah or it's mostly in Las Vegas. Back then, it was in different places. It was in Orlando, and this particular one was in Minnesota. And I was sitting in the stadium watching your first game, excited to see you out there. And you were just very, very rusty, understandably so. And this is where I started kicking myself, saying, this is my fault because I didn't let him play 5-on-5 for the past 3.5 months.
Yeah, and it was exactly that. I think I finished with 4 and 5 maybe. I don't even know what I had, but it was awful. I ended up finding my legs a little bit in that summer league. I remember I got ejected from my second game in summer league. So my second...
yeah, it was the fourth game. Yeah, you got into a fight.
Yeah, man, a guy bowed me. Some guy that's not in the league, just a fringe guy, elbowed me in the head under the basket, and I put him back on his ass and then got thrown out. And I thought it was the end of the world after that. I remember going back to the locker room like, holy shit, I'm going to get in so much trouble. Like, what's coach going to say? And, they came back to the locker room and it was just another normal night in the NBA for the most part, which was I guess they see that kind of shit.
The Bucks were happy to see that, though. They were really pleased you did that because that shows that you don't take crap from anybody.
Yeah. And look, finished the summer league pretty respectably, had a few games, a few double-doubles, and then started to show what I could do. And that was kind of the off season and lead up to the draft. But look, I wanted to get you on to provide a lot of context. We're still friends to this day and still speak a fair bit. I somewhat saw your kids grow from the age that my kids are now to adults. They're both at gone to university and bettering themselves in that aspect. But I also just wanted to thank you. I think not only from a point of view of signing big money contracts and helping me through that, but I think taking me from a boy to a man with the things we spoke about, learning how to put a suit on, different things, talking me off the ledge in the middle of an NBA season, all that kind of stuff. I thanked you towards the end of my career when I retired and send you some things as a thank you. But this is a great forum to do that. But we'll definitely look to get you on throughout, because you've seen behind the scenes stuff about when I had really good years and bad years. So we'll definitely get you on down the track. But is there anything else you want to relay NBA draft wise for that 2005 year?
I have a couple of funny stories if you'll allow. I don't know if you remember this, but we did used to joke around because you can't just take all this stuff seriously. So you introduced me to Borat and Bruno and Ali G, and we used to watch some of the clips and the shows. And I loved your sense of humor. It's a very dry sense of humor, and and I think I can be funny from time to time. But there was one time there was a reporter that was sitting down with us, and you could just tell she needed a scoop. She needed to make her name, and she needed to find that one thing about the top pick that nobody else knew. And so we sort of played around with her a little bit. And, I think you'd started, you said, look, there's really nothing special about me. My family's from Croatia. They emigrated to Australia. I came to the U.S. to play. And then I said, and the fact that he did all this despite being born with only one liver is just a testament to all of his hard work and determination. And she starts writing furiously in her notepad. She's like, oh my God, he only has one liver. And we're looking at each other. Do you remember this?
I do, yeah.
We're looking at each other. She's literally about to run to her, her producer to start running with the story. And then finally we're like, look, miss, everybody's born with one liver. We're just messing with you.
Yeah,
but those are the kind of things that we would do.
Yeah, and if you don't know the context or don't know us personally, it actually can get us in some trouble, because if she would have ran with it, then there's ramifications of it. But I think you want to enjoy kind of the journey along the way, and I think we definitely had a lot of laughs. I used to look forward to flying out to Washington, D.C. or your base whenever we play the Wizards and just catching up and talking shit. And it was a good time, and a lot of the people that we met along the way. One Artur Rushkovic story I will mention is, I think after we'd signed, or it might have been leading up to the draft, we all went out to, I don't know where it was, where we were. I think we were in Atlanta. We all went out to dinner one night, and so this is a Serbian fella, really, cultured European wise, and do you remember we had, this is my first foray into how crazy he was. They brought the American tradition of bringing out your bill or your check before you've kind of asked for it. I guess in in Europe that is heavily frowned upon, because it's a sign of disrespect. It's kind of a sign of like, hey, you finished your meal, get the hell out of our restaurant. We've got other people to serve. Do you remember what happened that night?
I think he, if I remember correctly, he, in his mafia persona, told the waiter, "You stay over there in the corner. And if you see me raise my hand, that means you come over here. Otherwise, you stay right there." Is that sort of what happened?
That was during the meal. So for our listeners that haven't been to America, American waitresses and waiters work on tips. So sometimes, if you're trying to have a conversation, they're doing the right thing. They come out every 5 or 10 minutes. Do you need a drink? Do you need anything? And sometimes it gets a little frustrating because you're mid-conversation. So he lost it halfway through the meal at the dude and just put him in his box. But then this poor guy's brought out the bill after desserts had come out, and Alex has picked up the whole check, the leather checkbook or whatever, they brought it out, and thrown it across the room. And I'm sitting there looking at David, I'm looking at my parents, my dad's rolling, laughing, this dude's hilarious. I think you might have been a little embarrassed, oh, what the hell's going on? But just another funny memory I had, because he just would not take the disrespect of trying to get kicked out of the restaurant.
Yeah, I do remember his antics, but he and I were a good partnership, a good team. One more funny story. You remember the Gatorade?
No, Gatorade. Oh, that showed up at your house?
Yeah, so we got you a Gatorade deal for your training because you love Gatorade. So the question was, do we bring it to your hotel or do we bring it to my house? I said, I'll bring it to the house. This way I can give Andrew a couple bottles here and there and when he needs it. So you and I are down at Georgetown. I'm watching your workout. My wife calls me and Elisa says, "David, there's a delivery here. It's Gatorade." I said, "Yeah, it's just put it in the garage." And when I come home, she goes, "You don't understand. It's not a case of Gatorade. It's a pallet of the Gatorade." I said, "A pallet? Okay, so just put it in the garage." It was 250 cases of Gatorade.
Yeah,
it was 3,000 bottles that they delivered. It was insane. And so My kids loved it. I mean, everybody loved it. You and Drago are drinking 15 of these things a day. And after about 2 weeks, you tell me, my teeth are really killing me. And I remember saying to you, when's the last time you went to a dentist? You said, I don't know, a couple of years ago when I was in Australia. So we took you to our family dentist. You must have had about 15 cavities.
I still got some to this day. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. I remember going to the dentist and even the dentist was like, man, what the hell have you been doing? I'm like, hey, working out and drinking Gatorade. So they brought in the Gatorade lights later on. So they were more more foray after that. But look, thanks again.
I have a lot more funny stories, but I'm saving these stories for my own book. You can't have all the glory, Andrew.
Oh no, we'll get you on. This is just draft year. All we've discussed is draft year. We still have a lot of different things to get through down the track when I'll bust your balls on getting you back on. But as I said, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. It's David Bauman, integral part of kind of my journey, and that's why he's on. But thanks again, David.
My pleasure, Andrew. I'll talk to you soon. Give Jess and the kids my best.
All right. Once again, a very, very special thank you to David Bauman for joining us on the 7th episode of the My Journey series here at Rogue Bogues. We will definitely get him on again, not only in the My Journey series for different phases of my career, but we'll also get him on hopefully to discuss everything to do with business and the NBA and how it's changed and what he's seen. I mean, it's a guy that's worked in the NBA for 20, 30, 40 years in some capacity, starting as an intern, working for the agent Michael Jordan was with. So he's seen a lot, and I'd love to pick his brain on a lot of different things. So stay tuned for that. Where does this leave me? So we talk about basically the end of that interview was Summer League, going through that. Right when that ended, I basically hadn't had time off for a number of years, really. So I actually went to Croatia and spent that time with Drago Pasalic, who we discussed in that interview. He was, the guy I worked out with all up until the draft, and he unfortunately didn't get drafted. But he was back in Croatia at the time. Lives on the island of Brač, Bol, fantastic part of the world, one of the nicest beaches you'll find. So I spent some time with his family. My family were over there as well. And then I spent about 2 weeks there just doing nothing, and then came back to Australia and started working out to get ready for my rookie NBA season. So that was when the frustration started about trying to find a specific place to train in Australia, which would then tie into later on opening my own academy, my own basketball facility down in the southeast suburbs of Melbourne, which we'll get into a bit later on in the further episodes. But that's where this episode ends. The next step is getting on a plane after some preseason training in Australia individually. Going into my rookie season, my first training camp, I get to Milwaukee, I think late August, to prepare for training camp, which was starting the 1st of October. So that will wrap up episode 7. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Like I said, I hope you got a lot out of that interview with David, because there was more to it than just my journey and talking about my career. There was a lot of gems in there, and whether you're an aspiring businessman, agent, basketball player, basketball coach, I think it really unlocks a whole lot of different things for you to enjoy. So once again, thank you. We're at Rogue Bogues on all your favorite social media platforms. One word, Rogue Bogues. We're on all the favorite podcast platforms that you'd find most podcasts. So keep listening. I believe the basketball podcast is doing very, very well. We're the number one basketball podcast in Australia right now, which is fantastic. So hopefully this My Journey kind of autobiography of my life is being enjoyed, because I've definitely enjoyed telling the stories.